happy to. So, Procure Impact is a procurement partner for hospitality companies. We create innovative retail experiences and amenities grounded in purpose. And what makes us unique and what really ties to the mission of this group of people who have gathered is that we exclusively work with suppliers that employ individuals with disabilities, resettled refugees, people who've experienced incarceration, addiction, or homelessness. So out of the 3,000 plus products we have in our B2B marketplace, they are all made by individuals with barriers to work. So when hotels are buying from us, they are creating job opportunities and economic mobility for some of our most vulnerable and marginalized populations. So it's truly an integrated strategy for businesses that want to do well and do good by distinguishing the guest experience at the hotel with products that inspire and spark conversation and belonging in hotels all over the country. I started this company because I saw a gap. As Father Justin was just mentioning, I used to be in philanthropy. So I was working in philanthropy at the intersection of social enterprise and nonprofits, looking for innovative models that were breaking the cycle of poverty. And obviously, a job is one of the most transformative ways to do that. So we invested very heavily in workforce development programs. But what I saw when I went all over the country to visit many of these social enterprises is that they made products or services and they didn't have concrete distribution strategies about how to get those products to market. So I saw these incredible enterprises that made bath and body products and would support survivors of trafficking that were selling a lot of their goods during holiday gift season. And making a majority of their funds during a very concrete time during that Q4 timeline. And so I was trying to think through ways that they could create more repeatable, sustainable revenue streams and realized that many of these social enterprises weren't thinking about B2B corporate purchases. They weren't thinking about how do I get into the hotel down the street? How do I get into Target? How do I get into the concession stand at the nearby stadium? That they didn't have those relationships and they weren't thinking about how to bridge into those different types of purchasing strategies. So I saw this latent opportunity to help scale social enterprises that were doing this transformative work to support vulnerable and marginalized populations and creating products and creating that bridge between them and their products that are amazing and corporate America, corporations that want to purchase with intention, create impact, and weren't thinking of them as suppliers. So it's been a wild journey going from idea and concept 3 years ago to 2,000 hotels now purchasing with us nationwide. And the kind of impact that we're having, it's creating exponential growth for a lot of these suppliers that are the linchpin in communities working with folks that wouldn't otherwise get access to work. So it is truly joyful work doing this work, and we see ourselves as an infrastructure play for social enterprises nationwide.
That's amazing. Really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I also just realized that because the sun hasn't gone down, I and everyone probably looks like a big silhouette. So
it's cool though. It's very dramatic.
Very dramatic. Oh, okay.
I'm on the East Coast, and so the sun is setting and it is dark here. So I'm like this strange yellow color right now because of my screen. So sorry.
It's for dramatic effect to intimidate. So tell us a little bit about the journey that you've had has been pretty interesting because you've gone from philanthropy to policy to now social enterprise, but now tactical and operational. Tell us a little bit about how those experiences in philanthropy, policy now also shape your thoughts around systems change and how that's showing up in Procure Impact. Maybe today, but also in your future planning, right?
Yeah, there's so much to say and unpack in that one question, but I'll start with, I think coming from that philanthropic background, you realize you're creating cycles of dependency at the end of the day. You are investing grant dollars, and I definitely created a lot of impact through that work. But ultimately it's not unleashing the full potential of the organizations in the same way that the market does. And so, what gets me so excited about what we're doing at a macro level is that we're helping the social enterprises align better to the market opportunity by helping them hone their products and services to a very ripe buyer. So hospitality ends up sort of being our focus right now because they consume a lot of products. They have huge purchasing power. And ultimately, hotels are all about creating experiences grounded in belonging, welcoming people into these spaces and places. And so when I think about the macro, we're helping these groups become less dependent on philanthropy. We're helping them find much more concrete, long term, sustainable revenue streams. And the market opportunity is incredible. Like when you just think about how much hotels spend in the United States in a given year, it's 200 billion plus dollars. I mean, the largest global purchasing organizations for hospitality are 20 billion in revenue. So if you just carve out a fraction of that for social enterprises that are at the edges of our society, working with some of our most overlooked and underestimated communities, the impact could be tremendous. And that's just looking in the US market. So I think what I've started to when I think about systems change, I see philanthropy as a lever, but I don't see it as the answer. Right? It is part of an ecosystem that creates supportive services. But if we truly want to unlock long-term sustainability, having those blended models where there's a profit or revenue generation opportunity is ultimately going to create more sustainability. And like in good, I don't know if you can hear, I have a year and a half year old mini golden doodle who just decided to join the conversation. It's like, 8 o'clock here. So sorry for the noise, but
Good.
kids and puppies.
We did hear the puppy, but it's way in the background. So you're totally.
Okay.
So you've taken a massive leap though from being on the philanthropy side, kind of the traditional how do I change the world side, to now being an entrepreneur. I'd love you to talk about, was there a moment when you knew you had to take that leap and go full on into founding something? And now even your husband works full with
We're
you.
all in. Yeah.
Talk about that moment. Talk about that leap, that journey.
Yeah. So I definitely did not have entrepreneurship as a sort of path that I was predetermined to capture and take. I was always an entrepreneur. I was always working within systems as a disruptor in big entities. So when I look at that theme in my work history, I was always building new things within large organizations and entities. I was the second employee at the Stand Together Foundation. So I got to build that from the ground up and build their incubator kind of accelerator model for nonprofits. So I hadn't fully understood that skill set as like foundational for entrepreneurship. I just didn't think of myself in that way. But actually, my Aspen experience really challenged me to think about how I can 10x my impact. And I kind of knew I was looking to make a leap. And the real story is I had another offer for another philanthropy that was looking to recruit me. And one of my fellows said to me, if you don't build your dream, someone's going to hire you to build theirs. And it sort of stopped me in my tracks because I had this idea for Procure Impact. At the time, it didn't have a name. It was called Social Impact Procurement. Like, how are you going to leverage corporate procurement towards impact? It was on a 4-pager that sat in my shared drive for a very long time. But when he said that, I realized I had been like dutifully building other people's dreams for a long time. And that if I really wanted to create with agency, I needed to bet on myself. And so I started small. So I didn't actually leap to, okay, I'm going to leave my comfortable job and completely go all in. I just started with a pilot. I asked a couple of hotels if we could partner with them to start to infuse these products into their property. And what started with a couple hotels has now turned into 2,000 plus hotels. And once I started realizing the market opportunity, I realized I was equipped to build this. Like I had the corporate sort of connections and background from previous lives. I had the social enterprise network. And what really sparked me like taking the leap and saying, I have to be the one that does this is a personal story, which is what brought me to philanthropy, which I'll share very briefly. I have a brother who at one point was homeless and a missing person. He is a very gifted artist and musician and writer. And he ended up in the throes of a mental health crisis. And actually, at certain times, we were not sure where he was. And the very, very long story short is that at a time he was still unhoused, he was actually discovered for his art. And Fortune 500 companies like Amazon and Pfizer started buying his art for their office spaces. And those purchases completely changed the course of his life. This was about a decade ago. And right now, he is married, employed, he is off disability, he is living a life we really just didn't think was possible for him. And that's what drove me to go into philanthropy is I was always looking for ways to apply my talents towards impact because I had lived experience working with my brother. But what drove me to build Procure Impact was when that happened for him, I was like, how do you scale that as quickly as possible for more people? And I knew I had both sides of the market. And if I tested it, and once I tested it, I started realizing the opportunity for scale. So I think that was a long-winded answer to say I started small in the initial testing, and I leapt because I felt like I had the sort of overlapping networks and capabilities to actually bring it to fruition. I did not have a tech background. Like, so some of this is like we learn as we go, but I hired the right people that did, that helped us build the e-commerce platform. And, we're still evolving and learning and growing every day. And I'm doing things I never thought I would do in my career, but it is so incredibly rewarding to see it all kind of come to life.
I think if we were in church, there would have been a lot of amens to a lot of what you said,
Oh,
a lot of those answers. I know that we can feel your passion, and you just shared, thank you, that really intimate and personal story. But I can imagine that there are probably a lot of skeptical CFOs and procurement professionals in those, high turnover industries in hospitality that might be pretty skeptical and might say to you like, hey, Lauren, great story, sounds nice, but you know what, that whole thing, that's really not our priority. Like, we got to run a hotel or
yeah.
whatever it is. So what's your pitch? Maybe when you started, but also now your team, I'm assuming you're not the only one pitching, but like generally, what's your pitch to the skeptical CFO or leader when you get to them that brings that heart forward? You know what I mean? The story
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point. At the end of the day, if this doesn't make hotels money, it doesn't work. And so if the products aren't above sort of the standard in terms of quality, if they're not going to deliver the value, if they're not going to distinguish the guest stay, all of this doesn't work. But the good news is we have higher reorder rates, like double the reorder rates than a traditional e-commerce platform. We have incredibly high retention in terms of our customers. And at the end of the day, this is a business imperative to drive revenue and increase guest satisfaction. If you go to a hotel and you see Doritos and M&Ms in the marketplace and the same products you would see at any grocery store or CVS across the nation, it's pretty uninspiring. It might motivate you to buy chocolate because you're hungry and you want peanut M&Ms because they're delicious, but it's not going to make you write in TripAdvisor something unique about your stay and how meaningful it was. We have chocolates made by individuals with disabilities that are the best truffle chocolates you'll ever taste. And in fact, we had the head of IHG's food and beverage do a tasting with our products, and he was so blown away by the supplier's truffle chocolates. He insisted on doing a call with the supplier because he wanted to tell them himself. He's like, I traveled the world. I eat chocolate for a living. And these are some of the best chocolates I've ever tasted. And in fact, their logo and their tagline is extraordinary chocolates made by extraordinary people. And when you ask that founder why they put that tagline in there, that she'll say, Ellen, it's Cameron's Chocolates. She'll say, I had to make our chocolates better than any chocolate you've ever tasted to diffuse your misconceptions about the people that work in my company. And so I love that challenge because we want to blow your minds with quality. We want to blow your mind with the ROI. And we end up creating ambassadors and super users of our platform who will tell everyone they know about it. And that's what is creating the flywheel for our success. It's actually because this works, not because it's a nice to have. It's actually a business strategy. The other thing I'd say to that is there definitely are those people where we have to have those conversations and show them like the metrics of the success. But every single one of us, everyone in that room has somebody in their lives who is impacted by one of the communities that we work with. A barrier that they've experienced, that you've experienced, that your family's experienced, that your neighbor might have experienced. And so, more often than not, we share what we do at hospitality conferences, and we have lines of people coming to talk to us about their child with a disability, their hopes and dreams for their loved one who has dealt with incarceration, their experience being unhoused. It actually cracks open this like beautiful connection that is very common story. Most of us have had some experience with these populations. So in some ways, we're giving people the ammo and the action they can take to kind of align with something that they're already passionate about. But also, we have the business metrics that show this works in hotels. It increases guest satisfaction scores. It increases sell through. These are superior products. But I love to be able to kind of show them their misconceptions in sort of the assumption that they're not going to be as good as what you'd expect.
And I literally got chills when you
Oh,
were saying, like, the founder of the chocolate company had to demonstrate the worth of the individuals by how incredible the chocolate was. I mean, just that story hits the nail on the head. But let me ask one more kind of like pretty serious question that I think is facing the sector. Do you think that we're seeing a permanent shift in how companies think about social impact and corporate social responsibility? Or is this just a post-COVID moment? Is this the beginning of the evolution of how procurement is done, or is this just sort of a passing moment?
yeah, I think a lot of the sort of pendulum swing, realignment, brand shifts, language shifts, show you sort of some companies that might not have been doing it for the right reasons, um, that might have been positioning their passion and commitment to certain values where their actions are now in tension, and that's okay. That sort of shows you who our people are and where to focus our energy. But in my view, we are all humans that are seeking belonging and connection, and that's not going to change. And at the end of the day, that's why our products are selling so well in hotels, is that that's what their guests are seeking. That's what I hope for when I'm experiencing and engaging in the world. And that's not a fad, right? That's a part of us all trying to realign towards meaning and purpose. And that seeking, like when you think about, um, you know, the deaths of despair right now, suicide rates, addiction, all of these sort of social sector indicators of what are pretty dire statistics, the loneliness epidemic, all of that is in reaction to this seeking that is happening and this desire for wanting more. So in my mind, that's a foundational sort of human experience that's not going to shift. How companies engage with that and how companies recognize and capture and leverage that will depend on how forward thinking and how long term and values aligned they are. Um, We have not seen a shift in sort of the excitement and passion and commitment from our partners. I think partially that's because hospitality, as I said before, is about welcoming people and welcoming all, and that's foundational to who they are. So that's not going to change. Um, so I'm pretty optimistic that a lot of the macro dialogue is a lot of noise. And ultimately, we just have to continue to have long vision about the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Well, I've done all the questions, but now I kind of, having primed the pump, I want to open it up to this incredible room. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask? Yeah. So say your name and make sure she can hear you real well.
Okay, I'm Patricia Isley, and I came from a corporate background, so I kind of understand the different cultures. And I have two questions. How many suppliers do you have?
Mm.
And do you, how do you merge their culture with your umbrella culture? And is there training? Do you just let them be who they are? How do you work that so that you're all together yet distinctively separate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have around 100 US based suppliers. So we're only currently working with suppliers in the United States. And they have a whole slew of different product types, everything from consumer packaged goods and snacks to bath and body and wellness products to earrings and handbags and furniture. We have a whole a whole slew. We do diligence on the organizations to look at a number of different things, but we're looking at the quality and reliability of the product, their breadth and depth of transformation. We're ensuring they are paying a fair wage and that we understand how they measure impact and the supportive services that they have. We also have a culture assessment kind of built into that, which really looks at the leader and how they think about change, how they adapt to change, where innovation comes from, to really assess growth and scalability and like how they manage their team and are they empowering their team. And because oftentimes social enterprises or nonprofits can have very leader driven organizations, and so that is potentially a risk in terms of the growth of the organization. Um, so, from a human perspective, we want to make sure that they reflect our values and how they treat people and the communities that they work with in their approach to the sector. And we get a lot of that data through those culture assessments and that initial diligence. We're also working with them every day. So it was interesting when I think about my time in philanthropy, we would like assess, from afar and grant. And then, that was kind of the relationship was distant. We're stress testing them every day with orders, right? So we have this awesome opportunity to sort of work collaboratively with them to tackle this next rung of their growth and to understand where their constraints might be and to help and kind of support them in that. So they're all distinct entities and organizations working with different populations. So they have to have their own unique approaches to it. But at the end of the day, all of these organizations are grounded in the dignity of work and creating inclusive work environments that are supportive, that enable people to thrive. Like that's the throughput that's across all of them. We do decline organizations that don't fit the criteria. We have like a scorecard in each area. And so it could be for, quality reasons. It could be for like culture flags that we might see, or it could be scalability concerns. And but that's kind of how we assess the organizations. Our from a culture from a procure impact standpoint, we deeply believe in like redemptive entrepreneurship and are trying to flip models of exploitation on their head. And so I would hope our suppliers would see us as like co-creators and that we're flipping the script on what, procurement tends to be pretty extractive and pretty top down. And I think if you asked them, they would see us as this collaborative partner that is really trying to create unique value for them and shifting the way procurement is done. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Lauren. That was wonderful.
Great question. Somebody else. Let's go in the back. John.
Thanks, Lauren. Can you hear me?
I think so. I'm like leaning in.
Talk loud.
My name is John, and I love the story about Cameron's chocolates. And I'm wondering is there another story about a supplier that really stands out to you?
Yes. There's so many. There's two. I'll tell two because I feel like I have all my favorites and I don't want to create airtime for for only a few. So some case studies of kind of the impact that we've had together and the growth we've seen with the suppliers. So Prospector Popcorn is another supplier that works with individuals with disabilities. They started as a movie theater, and the individuals, they call them prospects, the people that work at Prospector, run all aspects of the movie theater. So they run, the front end of the movie theater, they run the snack concessions, and they pop popcorn in the top floor. They are now in 300 hotels through our platform. And they were popping popcorn in this pretty small space. If you saw it, you'd be like mind blown at what they've been able to do. They have really amazing, cool flavors like key lime pie popcorn, strawberry ice cream popcorn. They have like a Cajun spice popcorn. They do a Cracker Jack popcorn for a baseball stadium hotel we work with. And they've actually customized flavors with us for specific properties that have now become amenities at hotels. So there's a pineapple paradise popcorn at a Pineapple Grove resort that goes to every guest with a card with the general manager. What's so cool about that story is they have shifted 18 million in payroll to the prospects since they started. And we popped them out of their space, and they are now moving into a 5,000 square foot facility next to the movie theater that we just did a ribbon cutting for with them a couple months ago. And they'll be able to triple their workforce. So there's a wait list to get these jobs because they're amazing jobs. And a quick little vignette, there's a gentleman named Dylan who's been there for about 10 years. And he did an interview with us and he talked about how he used to bag groceries and he really wanted to grow. And his supervisor was not very nice to him. And he ended up going to Prospector. He got a job there and he's done every single job at the movie theater. And he now lives on his own. He has his own apartment. He's gained like so much independence and confidence because of that ability to grow. So he tells it, we have a blog that explains his story and he tells it in his own words, but that's amazing, right? Like Dylan now lives on his own because he's been able to flex and to grow his skills versus do the same task and be limited based on somebody else's beliefs about his potential. Another really quick story. Sorry, I have so many stories. We work with a stroopwafel company called Stroopies that works with resettled refugee women. And if you're not familiar with stroop waffles, they're like waffles with a caramel center. Yeah, they're very good. You can warm them up on your coffee cup. We sell them like chocolate dipped, salted caramel, peppermint, like so many different flavors. They're a bestseller of ours. We just launched a major partnership in May of this year with a Marriott brand called Postcard Cabins. So if you've ever had the ads of like these glamping pods in cabins sent to you on Instagram that are like cool and chic, trying to get you to camp with a bed in the woods, it's probably Postcard Cabins. They're all over the country. We found out that they didn't love their s'mores kits, and we pitched them on an elevated s'more using stroop waffles instead of graham crackers. So it's like super ooey gooey caramel, amazing, really good. We won the contract, and they are 15 to 20,000 kits a month for Stroopies. And they immediately were able to hire 5 women who didn't have jobs just because of that influx of work. And now these little gable boxes that we've designed, these Stroopies s'mores kits, you can find them on Instagram Reels as people are opening their free amenities from Postcard Cabins, which is just so cool. So that's another case study of like our suppliers, but that Stroopy operation, we're now helping them think about what scale looks like because of the orders we're driving towards that one enterprise.
I'm so freaking inspired right now. It's so cool. Okay, yeah, Darren.
So Lauren, as you grow, do you find that you may be returning back to your roots at some point around creating an incubator, creating maybe an accelerator for folks who didn't quite make the cut on the scorecard for scalability along the way? But it sounds like you're doing some of that with your current buyers now, but it sounds like there's, even as you grow, even more capacity building you could be doing in the future. Does that come to mind?
Yeah, you're like reading my mind right now. Yes. So it's part of the irony of that is because I'm like, yes, we're going back to our roots. So the Stroopies example, this Stroopwafel s'mores kit, actually was the impetus behind us starting to think about that. So I have two co-founders. One of my co-founders has 20 years experience in hospitality. She was an asset manager and worked with owners, and so she's handling the buyer side of the equation. My other co-founder actually helped me build the Stand Together Foundation. She was my COO and worked at PwC and Goldman Sachs and built like the curriculum for our incubator program at Stand Together. So when that big influx happened for Stroopies, we did a lot of hands-on work with that team around thinking through the unit economics, thinking about the logistics and operations, helping them kind of streamline internally. And we realized that would be a great opportunity for capacity building in a more structured way and grant dollars. So I know I just sort of said before, like grants aren't the way to scale. But in this case, right, we have this huge order from Marriott. We know sort of the market opportunity for Stroopies. Things like a new sealing machine or a derober for their chocolate, little things like that could exponentially help them grow to the next rung of their production. And so we realized we could distribute grant dollars to help them with working capital needs as we're scaling the organization. So what we're currently starting to test is, could we identify those high growth opportunities and create supportive services for the supplier and also help them get access to capital? Because it could be things like buying the new packaging, right, up front, like these constraints that all small businesses experience during those growth periods. If we could help them smooth that out, that would be another benefit and added way we could add value. So we have a fiscal sponsor for the Procure Impact Foundation, which we haven't officially launched yet, but that is the vision, is like that we would raise capital that essentially directly goes to our suppliers for our for those kind of operational working capital needs as we're scaling the entities. And then to your other point, we also see that as a way to get people corporate ready. So for some of the groups, we just took we don't always decline if you're a small batch because there could be a great market for you in your region, for example, that would help you grow. So not all of our suppliers are nation ready, like in terms of their scale. So we just onboarded a Black-owned candy company that works with a second chance population called Brick City Candy. They do hard candy, and they're crushing it. We're doing small batch runs of cool flavor profiles for regional hotels, but things like R&D, to help them test packaging or to help them get barcodes on their packaging or things like that could be ways to distribute capital to get them to be more corporate ready. So that is how we're thinking about it. So yes, I do feel like in some ways I'm going to go back to my roots in helping think through how do we help our suppliers grow effectively.
Awesome. Other questions? Yeah, Jared.
Hi, Lauren. I'm off camera here. My name's Jared. This is going to turn into a selfish question, but the stage. So in 2 weeks, the House Ways and Means Committee is having a hearing on removing barriers to employment for people with disabilities. Subcommittee is Social Security and Welfare to Work. I've stumbled into testifying at that hearing.
Oh, interesting.
So a little out of my depth here. I'm curious on the policy side, 2 parts. Is there policy that we could enact right now that we're kind of, the ecosystem is set up to move on that we could if we chose to, that would help remove barriers for people that are working for the suppliers that you're working with? And then second part, is there something planting a seed for kind of an aspirational policy change that maybe we don't have an ecosystem created yet for, but could?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say that I'm not as in depth as on the policy side as I should be, in the sense that I feel like I now have all the case studies to help inform these types of conversations. But I can say two frustrating barriers. So a lot of our suppliers that work with adults with disabilities. So in the disability community, high rates of unemployment and underemployment, and it starts to become pretty scary for families as those adults become older and they become at risk of not having stable housing if, for example, a parent passes away. So some frustrating policy barriers that I know we've observed and that our suppliers talk about is this disincentive that is created when individuals who want to continue working need to access safety nets for housing. They sort of aren't unable to continue working. So they have some employees that essentially age out. I'm going to use words that are more like used in foster care, but they age out of these social enterprises' ability to provide them with work. And that's a travesty, because work is not just about a job, right? It's also about community. It's about connection. It's about skill building. It's all these other things. And so I've heard, for example, from Cameron's that there's an employee there whose parent recently passed away, and because the single parent is caring for that child, they have to start going through the system to get access to permanent long-term housing for later in life, but that will require that person not to continue working. So those are just, it feels like backwards, right? We're punishing people who otherwise want to contribute by creating arbitrary barriers in their services that they get. In a similar way, I know from my brother's experience working with my brother, there's accounts like ABLE accounts where you can kind of park money away if there's crisis and ensure that you're not going to lose benefits. But I don't know if they're flexible or as pervasive as they should be. So a lot of people end up capping their work hours to reduce the risk of losing the safety net completely. So I think it's similar challenges in the benefits cliff with sort of poverty overall, but there's complexity when you think about people that are ultimately dependent on others and want to continue to grow and not be left out of the workplace because of all the benefits work provides, where the policy is pretty limiting. So that's my initial answer, but I'd love to come back to you if you're interested in connecting you with some of our suppliers directly.
That would be awesome. And yeah, that was extremely helpful. And the first one, the housing piece, definitely is supposed to help. So thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm happy to facilitate that connection with you guys. Other questions? Yeah, go for it.
Hey, Lauren, thank you so much for being here. For two questions.
Your name?
Oh, Shaniqua Jones-Williams and fellow Aspen Fellow. So 2 questions. First, can I connect with you after this?
Of course, all of you.
I could be here all night asking questions. Yeah. So as my company, we also provide an experience, but for more multifamily properties. So how have you been able to find successful partners who believe in the value of the experience in which you're offering? Because sometimes that can be a barrier. They believe in wanting to offer a great experience, but everyone deems a great experience as something different. And so you found successful ways to vet these partners or find them and to begin building relationships?
Yeah, and when you say partners, you mean on the corporate buyer side?
Yeah, the corporate buyers for the hotels to partner, because not everyone wants to leave the popcorn on the pillow, but I love that. I'm like, give me some popcorn on my pillow, please.
Yeah, totally. So the way we started was pretty top down, and I say that because we realized we needed to talk to visionaries instead of people that were kind of implementing the same strategies that they've been told they have to implement. So Father Justin sort of talked about, like the procurement finance people. We would, if we went to the procurement people, we would go there and sort of die a very slow, sad death. Because they're not visionaries, right? Oftentimes they're not. They're optimizing based on price, and that's it. And that's the way their roles were designed, were to optimize the financial return for the company. So we realized we needed to shift the thinking of how to work with us, and if we went to those kind of like segment owners, that wouldn't be successful. So we went straight to CEOs of management companies for hotels. And everybody thinks hotels and they think Marriott and Hilton and IHG and Hyatt. And we do work with the brands. We have partnerships with almost all of them, but they're actually not the people who buy stuff at the property level. They're these management companies that you don't know the names of, but they're actually very powerful. So we went to Sage Hospitality. They have 70 hotels. They have a value about community, which is we want to serve and uplift the communities around us in which we live, work, and play. It's like on their website. And when we started poking around hospitality, there was a handful of management companies that had that ethos in their culture already. And their names kept coming up. So Sage was one of them. And Sage was our second partner that we locked. And we sort of started with a few believers that like jumped in with us early, and the flywheel started to happen from there. Like once we had 8 companies working with us, the next 12 were much easier to lock down. And so for us, when I say we went top down, Sage represents 60, 70 hotels, and Davidson represents 80 hotels, and Pyramid Benchmark represents 200 hotels. So once we got vision and values alignment from the C-suite, we essentially got the right to solicit their portfolio. Like we were an approved partner. What in hospitality, the odds are stacked against the small business because of this structure. Like nobody knows how to get to those people. So it's very hard for an individual business to like just randomly go up to a hotel and try to get work with them, because they're management companies ultimately making the decisions about these types of things. So that's how we sort of started, was with a very small few first as like the first movers. And then frankly, it's a small industry. And so once you had a certain amount of names, it was like everyone was like, oh, they're credentialed, and like it became much easier. But those first couple were really, really hard. And we just said, let us start small. Let us start with a couple hotels. Let us show you. And that's typically what hospitality does, is they'll pilot with a few. And then once they see the case study, they're like willing to expand.
Paid things, or with unpaid, or discounted?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the very first partner that we worked with, we piloted without, we were basically acting as a broker. We didn't have our marketplace yet, our e-commerce platform, which looks a lot like an Etsy or an Amazon, where our fee structure is kind of built into each transaction. So at the beginning, we were brokering and trying to demonstrate the model first. And we essentially did those first couple properties for free. And then the suppliers saw us getting access to the hotels, and we were able to negotiate the commission from the supplier and the buyer after that. So I did start with like a model where I was like demonstrating what's possible, but not getting paid. So at that point, I hadn't left my job. It was like my side hustle.
Yeah, that is a good point. You're getting paid on both ends of the transaction too.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I love the pivot. Thank you. That is so helpful from the financial minded person to the visionary person. That is something that's super important. Who's the right player that's going to unlock that door for you?
Yeah, we had to basically just shift the environment in which that person operates, so that they're like, they now have a greater set of tools to then say, oh yeah, you're helping us achieve our social impact goals, and now that matters to my CEO. But if we didn't do that, it would have put us in a buzzsaw pretty quick.
Yeah. You could say, look, John, Jane said you're buying some. So which are you buying?
Well, and let me also just share quickly this tidbit, because I didn't say it before. So one of the ways we did that is we created a campaign called the Dignity of Work Pledge. And we got these hotel CEOs, these management companies, to commit to shifting a percentage of their purchases to our platform publicly. And with that public commitment, they had an impact goal and a revenue goal with us. And the way we measure impact is anytime someone's building a cart, it shows you how many hours of work you're creating through your purchase. And that's based on the wage data that we have from our suppliers. So it's a real metric. So people would say, okay, we'll pledge 1,000 hours of work, which equates to $72,000. And so they knew they were like committing to a specific goal. And we actually provide impact reporting for our corporate partners. So they see that little gas gauge of how much they've spent with us. So for the procurement people, they know they're at 40% of goal and they have to spend more with us. It created the incentive to purchase and accelerate their purchases with us because we got those commitments from the CEOs.
Brilliant. Saw a question back here from somebody else. Yeah, Colleen.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about like the small businesses, particularly like with the refugee women, like just needing access to capital. I find that that's like a huge problem for specifically minority-owned businesses who are trying to make social impacts, but because they don't have the credit history or whatever it is. So what are things that you were doing to help them create capital, or is that just straight from your org? Like, what are some recommendations for us here in Kansas City to be able to do that, to make more of a social impact, and make that leap to the next?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, if you put more money in the hands of those individuals, it's going to create exponential growth in their families and stuff. And so our model, so we work with entities that employ those individuals to make the goods. And so our customer, essentially, our main points of contact are the organizations that versus the individuals that do the work or manufacture the product. And so it's creating more stable, sustainable wages for them and ultimately allowing them to hire more people as a metric. So when we mentioned Stroopies, actually all of our suppliers have wait lists, and that's part of the opportunity is like, how do we get more people off wait lists? The Women's Bean Project, which works with women who've experienced incarceration and addiction, they have 200 women on a wait list for those jobs. And so our increase in revenue to the entity enables them to hire more people off of those wait lists and serve more people through those enterprises. So we're not in direct connection to the people that work there. Some of those programs are cohort based, meaning they're purposefully temporary work to help give them access to skill development. So for example, Unshattered, which creates handbags and works with women in recovery, they work directly with recovery houses that identify women that are looking for employment. And so they have cohorts of women directly coming from those social services to actually learn this like beautiful handbag skills. They make like high-end handbags. And so oftentimes those people will stay on as permanent employees, but a subset of their jobs are purposefully temporary so they can serve more women and give them access to more training. So some are permanent long-term employment, some of them are cohort-based, like temporary employment, and they're often coming directly from halfway houses, supportive services, and or case managers who are helping them get that access to that job. So I don't know if that answered your question, but ultimately we're kind of like business to business on the vendor side too, versus directly working with the individuals.
Great question. We've got time for a few more. Other questions? Can you hear in the
I
back?
cannot. You might need to repeat it.
Wanting to provide that for the community. How do you find funding for new business? Like, we're coming from the nonprofit, we see exactly what you saw. We wanted to create a business that will be able to sustain itself, but at the same time, we want to create opportunity for the community. How do we do that? We're thinking of ideas like making pop-ups for people that want to try the small business, that otherwise they might not have the chance to do that. But the bump in the road for us is how do we find funds?
You mind repeating the question? I heard a little bits.
So, yeah, sorry. So, new business venture in formation, working on creating, what little I know of it, I'll do my best, is creating experiences from different ethnic communities. So imagine like quinceañera or other types of parties, events, or even maybe pop-ups for individual entrepreneurs, right? So, but they themselves are a new social venture and they're struggling with kind of coming out of the nonprofit world. How do we get funded to be able to do that work to accomplish our mission? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up that I did okay.
Yeah.
It's an access to capital for new social entrepreneurs question. Like, how do you do it? Where do you go?
Yeah. So there's a lot of angel networks that are out there, and angels are typically individuals who are interested in more like seed level, early stage venture ideas, and that's probably the least friction, like the most frictionless. Meaning, oftentimes those are people and individuals you can motivate to kind of take a bet on the business early, versus like traditional venture funding and more of this like institutional capital, which tends to be more difficult to get access to. I mean, I think the way I would think about it, because when we first started, we didn't have capital. I was doing this on the side and doing it low cost. Like, what could you test now that would be low cost? Or are there ways for you to kind of demonstrate traction to make that case for an investor or a capital provider? What kind of experiment could you set up? So for us, we had a pilot with a hotel management company that had 7 hotels, and at that point, all of us were doing it for free and doing it on the side, and we were literally like making PowerPoints, pitching product, and everything was manual. Everything was like invoices were in Word, and we're changing it was all very manual. And so, but with that, we were able to like show traction and show customer satisfaction and get good quotes and testimonials, and all of that kind of fed into my initial deck to get initial funding for the business. And I did go to individual investors that were excited about our mission and vision, who made that initial investment. And that's what allowed us to kind of build our beta marketplace. And our beta marketplace was not scalable. It was also like very much lo-fi beta, but at least gave us like a product to test even further. So there's also grant capital out there, which people don't often think about, but there are grant-making entities that will give grant funding to new social ventures that are looking for initial capital, and entities like Bank of America and other big entities that will give out grant dollars for new ideas. And I feel like I have a list somewhere in my inbox I'm happy to share of like some of those entities that are available.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. How about one more question? Anybody else? Burning questions? Yeah.
What's your vision for 2026? Now we are like going end of 2025. What's your vision towards 2026 for procuring that?
Yeah, so I'm going to tack on to that. What's your vision for 2026, and where are you in 5 years from now?
Love.
All gray hair. It's going to just go. It's going to all be, yeah, lots of wrinkles. So we've been growing pretty rapidly. We had 200% growth last year. We'll probably be about 200% growth again this year. As a marketplace, just to give you a sense, and a marketplace that sells a lot of snacks, that's like our main category, 65% of our sales. We've sold like 250,000 units this year, but we're selling like popcorn and granola bars, and so these are low cost items, just a lot of them. So for us, our pathway to profitability, because as a marketplace, we just take a fraction of every purchase. We're projecting profitability next year, which will be a huge milestone for us. And we are seeing that like consistent, month over month growth. And so when I think about 2026, we hope to have our Series A, which is our final capital raise, and be profitable. It's like as a base case scenario, that would be amazing. To go from idea 3 years ago, platform 2 years ago, to Series A next year. In terms of the big picture, like we're trying to build a movement in corporate America around responsible sourcing and shift the way companies do business. Like we don't have a little vision, we have a big vision. Hospitality was the entry market. We see travel and tourism as kind of the bigger bucket of what we're going after in the short term. We're in Dulles Airport. We have a 10-foot wall of snacks in Dulles. We found out we're going to be in Houston Airport and Reagan Airport next year. So we're trying to expand into airports, airlines, concessions, museums, cruise lines, like anywhere where the products can tell a story that really distinguishes that experience for the customer. But really, any company could buy from us. If you have an office space and you want snacks in your office space, like you could be intentional about where you're buying those. So there's a ton of adjacent markets even beyond travel and tourism. So, our big vision is to reimagine how procurement is done, to build an ecosystem that accelerates social enterprises' growth and scale and impact in the United States and beyond. Like there's also a whole other world out there that we could tackle where there's quite a lot of product-based social enterprises looking for distribution. So, and with hotels all over the world, that's like an easy way for us to grow. So, yeah, we don't have small goals, which is why all my hair is going to turn gray in the next year. But we're feeling pretty optimistic, and hopefully we can find additional partners, asterisks, Father Justin and others to help us think through how do we fully build out the ecosystem that transforms the way procurement's done.
Awesome. Okay, we've got one last comment, and then I'm going to wrap this all up.
Yeah, Lauren Southwick here. Thank you again. I was checking out your website, and I just love the stories section that you have in there. It's just the core of what you're offering, so I appreciate that. And I was wondering if there's a way that if I'm like traveling to Denver or Chicago, if there's a way that I can find the specific hotels that you're working with, so I can, if I'm choosing between a couple, I'm like, oh, Impact, you're working with one of them, I'd definitely love to.
That's so cool. To actually ask that question is really awesome. So thank you for asking that. Yeah, we don't have a way right now for you to find that information out. A lot of hotels are starting to market us on their websites. So if you go to Hotel Hive's website in DC, there's a section on us on their website and their commitment and the products that are featured. And we're actually about to launch videos. So customers will start to see, as they walk into their hotel rooms, these stories on the screen, which is really cool. One of the videos we're releasing in a couple weeks is narrated by Chef Andrew Zimmern. If you're a Top Chef fan, he was a judge on Top Chef. Bald guy, glasses, travel channel, food channel. He's a person in recovery. He's on our advisory board. And he narrated the first stories. He actually visited some of our suppliers to see the work himself. So our vision is to kind of transform the guest experience by creating these storytelling assets that you'll start to see in hotels across the country. And our sub-brand that might show up is Community Made Goods. So Procure Impact is a B2B name. And so in the hotels, when you start to see Community Made Goods in your minibar or in your retail store. These are merchandising experiences we're building for hotels. But I love the idea of like, how could you find the hotels that work with us and like, push customers to them. I got to take that back to my team and figure out how to do that. But we right now are basically arming our hotels with the ability to tell this story as a service to them, and it's starting to pop up on their websites, their commitment and the products that they purchase with us.
Be interesting to see what type of partnerships you could tie up with around Travelocity that would
Yeah,
as well.
I love that. Yeah, we actually have one of the former CEO of Priceline is on my advisory board. That's something I should ask him. Like, how do you do that? How do we get like the badge of like, oh, this is a socially impactful hotel for a customer? Because what matters is when you go on TripAdvisor and write about the chocolates and the note you got about who made them, right? That's ultimately like gold for the hotels, is to see those reviews and to see it referenced.
It's amazing. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for the ample time that you've given us. Thank you for the example, the inspiration. I think you have a whole room full of people that are walking away with a lot churning in their head and in their heart. So thank you for bringing that inspiration. And hopefully sometime, maybe even as soon as March next year, we might be able to meet you in person.
Oh yeah, I have to come. Yeah, I will be. I will be there. I feel like as my representative for my cohort, I'm going to be the leader that galvanizes everyone to Kansas City.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for the time. Really appreciate the thoughtful questions, and please do reach out on LinkedIn, connect, let me know how I can be helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Have a great night.
See ya.